Hi, thank you for joining us here today for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. We are going to cover the application and program review. This is hosted by the SBTDC Business Recovery and Resiliency Program. And I'd like to introduce Byron Hicks, our director, to give a welcome.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm Byron Hicks. I'm the State Director of the Small Business and Technology Development Center. We appreciate you joining us today in our series of multi-webinars that we've been doing over the last few months to help you with all the business resiliency opportunities that are out there for small businesses. We're really excited about the one today so that you can learn more about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grants. And we're really excited the SBTDC is able to partner in putting these on and support your small business in any assistance you need. We have 10 regional centers throughout the state that are ready to serve you with additional business resiliency counselors at each of our centers that have been trained and working on really hard to understand and to be able to help you with a lot of these opportunities that are coming out from SBA. Most of what we do is one-on-one confidential counseling. So please, if you'd like more information after this webinar, please go to www.sbtdc.org and reach out for assistance closest to you. And now I'd like to introduce another guest with us today, the Acting District Director from the SBA North Carolina District Office, Mike Ariola.
Thank you so much, Byron, and thanks very much to the SBTDC for having us today. Also, thanks to Bob Weston for his partnership in this very important series. Without a doubt, these live venue operators, live performance venues, movie theaters and such, all contribute mightily to the economic vitality of cities of all kinds of sizes. Just consider the live performance venue in your city or town where you live and how many businesses that supports, just in terms of restaurants, bars, shops, and that sort of thing. So SBA gets it. We get how important venue operators are to the livelihood of any community. And we're very gratified that the SBTDC has taken the time to share with you all to talk about how the SVOG program can be of importance to you. The SBA is providing the SVOG grant program as a competitive grant program. And it's for that reason that SBA's personnel such as myself and the SBA personnel in the district office in Charlotte, as well as Asheville, Raleigh, and Wilmington, unfortunately cannot provide individualized assistance to you, but the SBTDC can. And I definitely encourage you to seek out your SBTDC counselor nearest you for any follow-up assistance you might need with the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Ashley, who can take it from here. Thanks so much.
Thank you to Mike and Byron for the introduction and welcome. So we appreciate you joining us here today. Just to let you know who you're going to be hearing from, I'm Ashley Slonger. I am part of the business resiliency team that Byron mentioned, and also part of a 4-member team that is focused on the SVOG. And I work out of the Western Carolina University and UNCA campus. We also have Joseph James, who's with UNC Pembroke, Paige Griffin with Elizabeth City State University, and Cynthia DeVita Cochran with UNC Wilmington. So you'll be hearing a little bit from each of us today as we move through this program for you. So a couple of things just as we get started. This presentation is being recorded and it will be shared, both the recording and the slide deck. So just know that you will be getting a copy of this. We have a few slides at the end that will be resource slides that have links available to you, just that will help us to be a reference. We're going to do a quick overview of the SVOG program and then spend a little more time talking about the applicant eligibility, how you can use the funds, and focusing in on that application checklist and a few important reminders. We do also want to note that just yesterday, the FAQs were updated on the SBA site. So some of the information that we put together for this presentation, which was already done, there's additional information that wasn't available before yesterday. So before the slide deck gets posted, we'll make those updates as well. And then we'll have just a reminder about our webinar that's coming up next week. If you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A box on your screen to enter those questions. We will be doing a Q&A at the end of the session. So the SVOG is a program that was established through the Economic Aid to Hard-Hit Small Businesses, Nonprofits, and Venues Act, and is part of the American Rescue Plan Act. Up to $2 billion is reserved for eligible applicants with up to 50 full-time employees. And as I'm sure all of you know, the application does open tomorrow, April 8th. So who can apply? This program is primarily for venues that are in performing arts, live venues, theatrical productions, so producers and operators, also museums, zoos, aquariums that meet the criteria, movie, motion picture theater operators, and talent representatives. So I'm going to transfer the slides over for Joseph to talk a little bit more about some of the requirements.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, everyone. I just want to touch a few high points around just general requirements. One, as you can see, your business needs to be fully operational as of February 29th, 2020. You need to have at least a 25% reduction from the gross earned revenue of your business, making comparison for 2019 to 2020, quarter over quarter. You have some discretion over which quarter you use for the comparison. Also, you have to have already resumed or intend to resume business operations. And also, just a quick note about the PPP loan. If you received the loan after December 27th, 2020, then any SVOG grant will be, that the amount of your PPP loan will be reduced or taken from your SVOG grant. You're still eligible for SVOG potentially, however, it just will be reduced by the amount of your PPP loan. A couple of things to note around prohibited activities. Basically, if your business is involved with performance, product, services, or depictions of a prurient sexual nature, then you won't be you won't qualify. Also, just check your business status with the do not pay list. Most of you probably know if you're on that list, but if not, you can check that out on the Department of Treasury website. Now, as you can see here, there's a lot of discretion around how you're able to use these funds, payroll, rent payments, and things of that nature. A couple of things, though, that I do want to highlight. One is related to debt service. So you can use the loans to make debt payments on any loan or debt that was incurred prior to 2/15/20. You're also able, that date's also important for using the grant to pay operating leases. The operating lease needs to be in effect as of 2/15/20. Now, one additional sort of caveat to all of that is, let's say, for example, you refinance some loans after 2/15/20 that include loans that were acquired prior to 2/15/20. The amount of the loan, the amount of debt incurred prior to 2/15/20 is a coverable expense, but any other remaining amount in the refinance loan that did not fall prior to that date will not be an eligible expense. And finally, you can't use the funds for buying real estate, making payments on loans originated after 2/15/20, making investments in your business or loans, political contributions, or really any other use prohibited by the administrator. Specific documentation, here it's about record keeping. It's important to maintain your records, the documents that you use to determine and just provide evidence of your eligibility, but also employment records. And one thing to keep in mind, as it relates to documents used in determining your eligibility, that might be a little different based on those business groups, the type of business you're in, as Ashley described just a couple of slides back. So, for example, a museum may have some different documentation than a motion picture operator, as an example. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Paige, who will share a little bit about the application process.
Thank you, Joseph. There are several preliminary items you're able to prepare prior to the application opening. It does say that you need to register for a SAMS number before you can apply. However, during the break that we had earlier, I was reading through the frequently asked questions, and I saw that they are saying that if you have registered for SAMS but not yet received your number or your 5-digit character identifier, that you are still able to apply for the SVOG. You will just have to attest that it has been submitted. So all of these preparation checklists that I'm getting ready to share, I preface it again with what Ashley said at the beginning, that our frequently asked questions have been updated. And so at the end of this seminar, we will provide you with updated slides. However, for the purpose of time, I am going to read what we prepared prior to. The businesses may apply for PPP and then for SVOG. However, you may not apply for SVOG and then apply for PPP. Any PPP that was received prior to December 27th, 2020 does not need to be deducted. And that is part of the new updated frequently asked questions. The other is the proposed award budget. And this is not your total operating budget. This is a budget of how you will use the funds. And they are asking for that as far as the preparation that can be done ahead of time. Also, one thing that they have asked us to do, the SBA has asked, is to show that once you have submitted, that they will not contact you for any actions needed or any holds that are on your application. However, it does say multiple times that you are able to save your application as you're going through it. If you don't have a document that you need, or you need to sidebar with your counselor, please feel free to save the application and then return to it. But once it is submitted, it is a done deal. Next. The other checklist, and again, I've not looked at the newest frequently asked questions, but they are asking for a statement of need. This is your rationale to identify that gap, that problem that you've had with COVID, and it does not need to be long and lengthy. There is an example on the SBA website of how to write a statement of need if you do need that instruction. The corporate documents, they are pretty self-explanatory as far as the types of documents they need. Joseph did mention that there are other documents for the different entities, and we will discuss that at a later time. I also saw that they have an updated list on last night's frequently asked questions. The government issue ID, it is a front and back, and the employee list with job titles and employee status, mentioning your full-time and your part-time. Remembering that part-time is 10 hours to 29 hours. Anyone less than 10 hours is not necessarily considered an employee. And then for those of you who are nonprofits, the tax exempt letter. Next. Some other items on the checklist, your 2019 tax return, 2020 if you have filed. If you will, I'll mention that if you are a nonprofit, typically you have a late fiscal year, and so they're asking you to submit 2018 and 2019 tax returns. And then you also will need to provide a statement to clearly document your fiscal year. At one time, there was a mention of a monthly and quarterly income statements. However, now they are just asking for quarterly. They will need to be signed by the officer of the organization. And then your most recent tax returns or financial audited financial statements. And the direct cost agreement as well. That is a total between your indirect expenses and your direct cost base. And then also providing payroll statements covering February 2020. Next slide. These are just some standard forms that they're asking for in the checklist. They are all fairly self-explanatory, and if you will log on to the SBA site, they have tutorials on these forms, and they also have YouTube exercises of how to help fill these out. Next. Ashley did mention that the application is scheduled to open tomorrow. Unfortunately, I have not seen a time. When we finish the seminar, I will go through the frequently asked questions from last night to ensure that there is not a time attached. All the applicants can apply. It is a first come, first served basis. And I'm sure you're very familiar with the priority periods. There are 3 of them. If you need more guidance on that, we'd be happy to answer those questions in Q&A. And the SVOG portal is where you will need to apply. There is another slide, if we could go next, where that portal is listed. This is just some helpful hints to remember. However, as I said in the first slide, it has changed. So they are requiring you to have a SAMS number. However, if you have applied for it and have not received your SAMS 5-character identifier, you will just simply have to attest that you have applied for it. They are asking for the proposed budget award, how you will spend that money and how those funds will be used. Remembering that you can save your application and return to it to add documentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We are more than willing to help via text or email or by a phone call. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia.
Thanks so much, Paige. Thanks everyone else for joining us for this webinar, and I hope we've given you a good overview of the SVOG grant program. Thank you to our SBA representative, Mike, for joining us, and to Byron. And thank you to our specialists, Paige and Ashley and Joseph, for giving us such great information. I did want to ask and remind everyone at the end of the webinar, when you log off, you'll be receiving a link that will open to a survey at the end of the seminar, at the end of the webinar, and I ask that you would complete that survey so that we can gather feedback on how well this went and any other questions that you may have. We are going to spend a few minutes addressing quite a few questions we've got in the Q&A box. If you have any others currently, we ask that you would go ahead and enter those in the Q&A box, and so that we can start addressing them one at a time. There's quite a few detailed questions that we have for our team on how to enter accounting information. So for instance, Eric has asked, question 17 asks for gross receipts by month. Do we think they really might mean revenue by month instead of gross receipts? I think Paige, you addressed that already in terms of quarterly, not monthly. And did you have something else you want to add? Oh, I can't hear.
Only to say I'm hesitant until I read through the frequently asked questions that were put out last night to say, Eric, that I will be glad to share my contact information. If you would like to share yours with me, I am planning, my afternoon is blocked out to read through those and to learn them. So I would be happy to get back in touch with you this afternoon.
All right. Another question we have from John that maybe Joseph you'd like to address is, what if existing debt prior to February 2020 was refinanced with an idle loan?
As far as I can tell, I've just kind of skimmed over the updated FAQs as well. And as far as I can tell, there are no stipulations related to who the lender was for the refinancing of the loan. So I would say maybe a soft yes, that it would still qualify. But I'd like to do a little more, just deeper dive and see if there were any nuances that were fleshed out a little bit more specifically. But yeah, I think just based on what I've seen this morning, there's a pretty good chance that's covered.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joseph. We have another question now from Jennifer. At what point in the application is our grant amount calculated? Are the qualifying budget numbers for our allotment coming from our 990? And if so, what line item from the 990 are they using so we can calculate what we may be receiving and put together a budget? Who would like to take that? Paige.
I'm typing.
Okay. You're going to answer that. Paige is going to type that answer in the chat, I think. So John is asking for priority level 3 is the calculation of the award amount based on gross revenue or earned revenue. Ashley, do you want to?
I'm sorry, could you repeat what was the first part of that?
For priority level 3 is the calculation of the award amount based on gross revenue or earned revenue.
So for the third priority, it's going to be
Earned
based off
revenue.
of your earned revenue
Great.
for third priority, and gross revenue for first and second priorities.
Okay, so Eric is asking if we can confirm that in the budget we submit, we should already remove the amount of PPP2.
I believe in one of the earlier SBA webinars, and that would be something, just to mention this as well, if you have not had a chance to look at the SBA overview, highly encourage you to do that. They did a really good job of putting together some very detailed information. They kind of walk through all the things that you'll see. So it's really, really beneficial if you haven't had a chance to see that recording. And it will be on one of the links that we share. But yeah, I think that I just lost my place here. I apologize. That is part of what they asked to do in the budget, that you could just put that as a line item, the PPP amount, and deduct that from the budget.
And he also asked if the budget should be 45% of earned revenue from 2019 minus the amount of PPP2. He felt like this SBA webinar was not clear on that one.
So we were actually going by prior frequently asked questions where they did answer that. However, in the questions that came out last night, which I read through, it said any PPP money received prior to December 27th, 2020 does not need to be deducted. So that's a little bit different than what we were told in the beginning. I will reference it to say on the frequently asked questions, I believe it was on page 30. It was on page 21 and the question was 34. So on page 21, most of the part through those questions speak to the PPP.
Great.
If that's any help.
Cheryl is asking if we submit an expense as necessary, business expense, but the SBA disagrees. What happens? Do we have to repay that?
I think that's what I am not sure on that one. I think we would have to do a little follow-up there to be able to answer that question specifically.
Okay, we'll put that on our FAQs, that maybe we'll be able to talk about those kind of granular things. We are going to, just so everyone knows, we are going to put on another webinar next Wednesday at the same time, and some of those a little deeper dive questions we'll be able to answer, hopefully.
Cynthia, just a thing to note that was as part of the SBA presentations, that they did explain for the budget that the budget is what you plan to do with the funds. So when they accept, if they approve essentially your award, it will be based, they will use that budget as what you have agreed to spend the funds on.
Right.
So if there will be some guidelines for the award process, that if you have a variation to what you originally submitted, I think there's a little bit of room there, like 10% that you can do without asking for approval. But if it were a significant variation, then there would be a process for which you would have to ask for approval from the SBA to alter how you use those funds. So that may help address that question a little bit.
Thank you, Ashley. That's great. Ella is asking, oh, sorry, Mary Adair Tremblay is asking, where will you insert the form 4506-T and 4506-C? Paige, are you familiar with that? Maybe you can.
Yes, 40506-T is actually your permission that you give them for the IRS to look at your financials. So for that, it actually is, there'll be an upload button, is my understanding, able for you to download. I think they suggested JPEG, PDF, doc. And Cynthia, what was the other one? Do you remember? There were 4 different on the new frequently asked questions that I looked through, 4 different ways that you were actually able to upload. I will find it, Mary, and send it to you.
Yeah, and some of that may be part of Paige's is typing the answer in there. I appreciate that. Some of the details on that also, once we are able to see the applications live, we'll be able to answer some of those questions in a little more detail next week. So if you have really, and also we will we are encouraging you to reach out to connect with a business resiliency counselor. We'll be, it's actually at the bottom of the page that you're looking at now. svtdc.org/ERFC. That's where you can request business counseling, and you can meet one-on-one with a counselor, because some of the questions that we are getting are at such a granular nature that we aren't certain of how we'll answer those until the application is actually live. For those of you who are asking about when the application will be live, on the homepage for the grant, which is svograntportal.sba.gov/s/. That is the homepage, and you can sign up to be informed when the application opens. So that might be the best advice we can give right now in terms of timing. We just don't know what time the application will actually open.
Hey, Cynthia, the other file type is Excel. So
It is
doc, Excel,
Right.
and then the ones that Paige mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I will also say, if you go ahead and sign up in the portal for those updates, these checklists that we have given are on there. They're actually also on the frequently asked questions. So helpful information to have.
All right, so Ella is asking, 941 quarterly statements are signed in her company by our payroll company, who we have granted authority to file on our behalf. What's the best way to proceed? Should we sign over her name or provide the document that gives her authority?
I'm typing it in, but I would do both.
Okay. John's asking, should the payroll statement be just for February 2020 or the entire first quarter? Payroll statement. Anyone want to jump on that?
In a minute after I type Ella's response, just.
Jacqueline is asking if there's a list of eligible NAICS codes for live venue operators.
I am not aware of a specific list.
NAICS codes, yeah. As long as you meet the criteria that's explained in the application in the Federal Register, there's quite a lot of detail on that, pardon me, and also in the FAQs. So I would encourage you to use that to guide your client. Do tax returns being submitted need to be signed and dated by the owner? When they're submitted, they must be signed. So I would assume that that's correct. Is that, would you say, Paige?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm 2 questions behind answering.
That's okay. Vicki asks, venues typically have numerous part-time employees who work only on show days. These are employees that are on our payroll, but we just stated if they don't work 10 hours to 29 hours a week, they're not considered part-time employees. Can anyone point to where this is documented?
Yes, that was actually in the frequently asked questions from March 22nd. I have not read last night's thoroughly, but it stated they are not considered employees if they are less than 10 hours. I will try and see if I can find the page number before we end this.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm
I can search for that page.
okay.
Well,
Okay, the next question is, if you rent a cruise ship for a music festival, can we include this cost as a rental expense? So on the new guidance 4.6, which was released last night, you might want to look at question and FAQ 24. I think it's on page 5, and that may address that. It's the guidance says. The question is, does a cruise ship count as a qualifying venue for promoters or producers to stage performances? So the answer is, it is possible a cruise ship may serve as a qualifying venue for the business activities of eligible entities if it meets all the venue requirements, which are defined performance space and audience spaces, lighting rig, mixing equipment, etc. But the cruise ship itself would not be eligible for an SVOG. So Cheryl, I would say that hopefully that answers your question. It looks like that would be an allowable expense. Carly, can all businesses apply starting tomorrow, or only ones seeing 90% or greater reduction? So this is the first priority. So yes, only those who are seeing that 90% reduction. Wedding venues, do they qualify?
Just a second on that last question. This is Bob. Let me clarify. Everybody can apply when it opens, but they only look at the applications in order of the priority groups. So everybody can go ahead and apply unless they've changed it, but your application will not be reviewed until your priority group comes up.
Great, thanks for that clarification, Bob. Did we answer? So wedding venues, it seems our wedding venues are not eligible according to the original guidance of this grant.
Correct.
in most cases, they don't meet the requirements.
Correct. Elizabeth, in the application, we are required to provide monthly gross revenues for 2019-20 and year-to-date 2021, where they are specifically listing the 2019 numbers should time to my 990, although she's concerned about the new note regarding in-kind donations. And the 2020, she would assume also should tie to our expected 990. Do I include my 2020 forgiven PPP loan here in 2020? Paige, do you want to address that one? It's a little detailed.
I'm sorry, I'm still typing another question.
Okay.
Elizabeth, I will send you some information right now.
Thank you, that's great.
Hey, Cynthia, to go back to the employee question, it does still state that employees that worked less than 10 hours a week are not considered an employee. So in that 10 to 29 is considered 1/2 part-time, half of a full-time employee. And then anyone who works 30 hours or more is considered full-time.
But under
And
10, then they don't qualify. Is that correct?
Right. And so these calculations are just as it relates to determining your business size based on employees.
Okay.
So that's what that has to do with. So just trying to make sure that you're not over that 500 count, and whether or not you might fall into the 50 employees or less count.
Great. Municipalities do not have tax returns. What documentation will be required from municipalities? So on page 6 of the new FAQ, number 33 might address this. It says the question there is because government-owned eligible entities generally operate as divisions and do not of governments and don't have their own EINs. Will the SBA look to the governmental owners of such entities for purposes of determining an application's principal business activity, just as with all privately owned eligible entities that use a parent company EIN? The answer on the latest FAQ is no. The SBA will treat these entities separately in reviewing their SVOG applications to ensure Congress's intent to have these funds available to government-owned cultural institutions. The SBA will confine its examination of the principal business activity of a government-owned eligible entity to the operations of that entity itself, and not more broadly consider the operations of its government owner, even where the entity uses the government owner's EIN. Does that address hopefully that addresses your question. Okay, let's see, they're kind of jumping around here. So Eric, his question was not about the period, but about they're asking for gross receipts instead of income. So I want to differentiate that. Eric's provided an email there, so if one of us wants to tackle that and email him, that would be great. Amy asks, can you share anything about what application due date we should use with the tiered priorities? Again, I think Bob may have addressed this already. Go ahead and apply as soon as possible so that you will be in line when your priority level comes up. Charles, is there, go ahead.
Hey, may I just add that the SBA will be putting them in the own priorities. They are just intaking, and the first 14 days is that first priority, 90%. Yes.
Is there a size limit on files that are submitted? Does anyone know? It doesn't.
Yes, I think.
Okay. So there'll be promotional ads, ticket ledgers, equipment documentation, et cetera. There might be large files.
I just had that. Hold on just one second.
Can you access the chat? Ashley, go ahead and type that answer in there.
I am not sure, since I'm doing this screen share, I'm not sure if I can.
Oh, you can't see the Q&A.
Yeah, so.
Okay, I'll come back to that one. Let's see. Yeah, and Charles is asking an additional question on that. Should it be one PDF with an index or separate files? 35
megabytes, I think, is the file size per file.
Eric, okay, great. Eric, you're asking about SAMS number. So a SAMS number is when you register with at beta.sams.gov, you get a number that's specifically yours for working with the government. And that number, it's a little bit challenging right now. I think, Paige, you said people are getting kind of delayed in getting those numbers, but you also have to have a DUNS number in order to get that SAMS number. So there's a link when you go to get your SAMS number, there'll be a link there for the DUNS number as well. So that's what that is. Sherry says, we are an arts center facility with 80% of earned revenues coming from nonprofit educational activities to meet all the facility requirements for a museum with art galleries, lecture halls, auditorium, theaters. We think we fit best in museum category. Could someone confirm that? So Ashley, do you want to?
Yeah, I think that it would be good to maybe talk a little more specifically to be able to answer that question, to see the information. But I do know that in the FAQs, it indicates that you should evaluate which one offers the best. If you have two entity types that you might fall into, that you would choose the entity type that would offer you the best, the highest award amount. So you would have to kind of evaluate both options and then make sure that that was the correct entity type. I'm not sure if that's exactly what the question is, without seeing a little more information.
I think she's asking if they fit. We think that they fit in museum or venue, I assume. So it seems that I mean, that's really up to the individual who's applying. Bob, did you have?
We actually need more information to adequately advise them. They probably need to meet with a counselor.
Okay, that's great. Nate asks, just stating all awards are based on earned revenue, regardless of priority. Eligibility is based on earned revenue in priority 3 and revenue in priority 1 and 2. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Cynthia, I did not hear that.
All awards are based on earned revenue, regardless of priority. Eligibility is based on earned revenue.
Gross earned revenue for the award amounts.
Correct. And the priority 1 and 2, priority 3 is earned.
Okay, great. Patrick asks, if you've defaulted on a government guaranteed loan, are you still eligible?
You need to check that do not pay list.
Okay. Do sales of advertising and programs, playbills count as earned revenue?
There is a definition in the new frequently asked questions of gross earned revenue on gross revenue and then earned revenue. And I believe it's on page 23.
Okay, thank you. Sarah asks if the budget is allowed to include expenses that were already paid for March 2020 to the present. That's correct. Mary, can you talk a little more about note the primary use of funds, meaning is that a percent of the whole application amount? I think she's asking if it should be in percentage or it should be in dollar amount format.
For the budget,
Mm-hmm. When
I think they're looking for dollar amounts in the budget. The one thing like disadvantage is just, of course, not knowing exactly what this will look like when they go into the portal, but based off of the kind of that application preview, I believe they're going to need to put in a dollar amount that would equal up to the total eligible award amount.
Okay, great. Caitlin's asking if we can confirm which IRS form we're supposed to use, 4506T or 4506C. She states, we've been informed that the IRS recently changed from T to a new form to send transcript information to third parties, form 4506C, which utilizes the income verification express service. So 4506C will allow the SBA to be designated to receive the transcript information and will get the SBA the information they need. Paige, that's probably your.
Yes, there is a difference between the two. She is correct. However, in the frequently asked questions, all I've seen is mention the 4560T.
Okay.
I would imagine too that this will be very specifically noted as part of the portal application process, that what you have to require, what's required and where you're supposed to upload it will be specifically outlined.
Okay, great.
Even in one of the questions I was reading in between the break was, it will not allow you to move forward until you have completed that portion of it. So that's the importance of saving the application, getting that information and coming back to it.
Great. Yeah, that's good advice. Just remember that you can save these applications, that you don't have to complete them all in one sitting. Particularly if you're going to meet with your a business counselor and get advice, it's better to get that advice and enter it correctly than to make that mistake, because you won't be able to finish it after it's submitted or change it. Jennifer, we did answer your question. You might scroll back up. I think Paige was typing the answer to that question. Thanks for following up. John Russell, if we file our e-file or 990 forms, should we also submit our form 8453EO, which is our signed authorization to e-file? Does anyone want to address that? If they're e-filing, should they also submit the signed authorization to e-file? That might be a question that you need to connect with the business counselor. That's a very specific one. And I have not seen that addressed specifically. Have you?
Forgive me, I have not either. And so I'm very hesitant to answer. I would have to go through the questions, but I would reach out to your business counselor because that is what they are there for.
Yeah, we can find that out with given a little time. Susan, we are a nonprofit providing arts and wellness classes for cancer patients, survivors, and caretakers. Arts classes and wellness classes, would they qualify?
I think obviously I think we'd have to have some more information to answer that specifically, but I don't know that they would meet all of their requirements. And I would encourage them to look at the eligibility checklist to see if they can meet all of those requirements. And that will be one of the links. So you can click through that to see if you have the minimum requirements to qualify.
Great, thank you, Ashley. Vicki is clarifying that she was referring to the employee list that's referenced on the preliminary application checklist. It states complete listing of all, so it requires a complete listing of everyone who worked for the entity. So not the employee count qualification, but she wants to know, should she, so those employees that are working less than 10 hours, should they even be entered on that list?
I would say that based off of that description for that checklist, that if it's a list of everyone and you pay them as a W-2, then there's no harm in listing them because it also asks you to note the hours that they work.
Right, so that they wouldn't count towards your employee count, but they should be on that list.
Yes.
Great. Whitney, we are a small operation and don't usually do formal booking contracts unless it's with bigger acts. I've put together screenshots of emails sent between myself and the musicians or booking agent. Will this be sufficient? Because there is some requirement for documentation of booking of acts.
I have a group that I'm working with and would be happy for her to sit in on it. They are from across the state. I will send her my contact information because we're meeting this evening about 5:30.
Great, Paige, thank you. Again, your business counselor or any of us on the SVOG deep dive team can meet with you regardless of where you are to give you a little bit more time and specific attention to your questions. So please reach out and register with us so that you can get assigned a counselor. We are city-owned and not required to file tax returns. Will we be able to submit the application without tax returns? Are there other documentation we should provide? I think I already addressed that. I would point you to page 6 of the new SVOG. I think it's answer 33. Lauren, okay. Amanda Griffey, we are a local government operated theater and event venue. We believe we fit best in the auditorium / performing arts center category. However, we don't sell tickets. We book clients and clients are responsible for their own marketing and ticket sales. We believe we are able to provide all other revenue loss information as requested. Do we qualify?
I would refer back to the frequently asked questions again. I'm sorry to keep going to that, but I believe it answers that question. Joseph, are you on there right now?
Yeah, I'm scanning through the FAQ
For that
right
particular page?
now. On the FAQs?
Yes.
Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
So if they don't sell tickets, will they still qualify as a venue? If the tickets are sold by the client?
It is answered in those frequently asked questions. That's not one of the areas that I've been familiar with as far as live performances. And so I would have to refer back to that.
That's a good question, Amanda. I think the answer is we are not quite sure.
I'll find it in the FAQ and
Okay,
type it in when I
Joseph, do
find
you
it.
have access to the Q&A?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask Joseph to do a little homework on that. Maybe he can answer you live before we get off the call, or he can provide his email for you. Michelle, payroll statements, is this a specific form, and what is the time frame? Just February or the entire quarter? I don't think this has been answered yet, though it was asked. Okay, so for payroll statements, is there a specific form that the applicant needs to use, and what is the time frame? Is it just February or is it an entire quarter?
And the frequently asked questions that actually ask for quarterly income statements for 2019 and 2020. Anything outside of that, I would have to check with their CPA.
Payroll statement. So if you're applying, should they provide then the payroll statement for the entire year or just for the quarter? Is I think the question. Again, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. I have not seen that.
Okay, so Michelle, that's a good question. We're going to spend a few more minutes kind of digging through the FAQs and see if we can't answer that live via text. But if not, could one of you, Ashley or Paige, just drop your contact information into Michelle's question, or actually it has to be Paige because Ashley can't see it. And then Charles asks if we're applying for the PPP2, but do not know what we are potentially getting. What dollar figure do we use to deduct in the budget? I think we had a similar question earlier. Who would like to address that?
They've applied for PPP2 prior
the
to
amount.
or after, so they're in 2021.
And they don't know what the amount is they'll be getting. What dollar figure should they deduct in the budget?
And that's going to have to be,
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important is that the way it is currently set up, if you've not been approved for the PPP and you apply for the SVOG and get awarded an SVOG, if the sequence that the SVOG were to be approved, the award approved before you hear back on PPP, then you will not be able to take the PPP loan.
that is correct, Ashley. However, I know on page 21, I believe it was question 34 of the new frequently asked questions, only because I had somebody ask me and I went and looked. I would go there and see, because it talks about any businesses that receive PPP money in 2020 and 2021, only deduct the 2021. However, if you have not received it, you don't know what amount to deduct.
Right, yes. So you do not have to deduct PPP if you received it prior to December 27th, 2020,
Correct.
only if you received it after. So this would essentially be someone who is applied either for first or second round PPP who's still waiting to find out if they have been approved. So it will be a little bit of a decision that has to be made in terms of whether or not they click that submit button on the SVOG before they have the PPP status, application status, if they're still waiting to hear back.
So I am reading that exact one. It is question number 34 on page 21. And the answer is to note, if a 2021 PPP loan applicant is approved for an SVOG before the SBA issues a loan number for the PPP loan, the applicant is ineligible for the PPP loan, and acceptance of any PPP loan proceeds will be considered unauthorized use. So that's a pretty important answer, and make sure that you're complying with that so you don't end up using those loan proceeds in an unauthorized manner. Ingrid, I have the same question about payroll statements. It is listed under financial documents in the checklist asking for, quote, payroll statements covering February 29, 2020. It does not explain what is required. Joseph, could you do a little bit deeper look at that, at the current FAQs, and see if we can get an answer on that, since you've got it open? Ingrid, we'll try to answer that question live in the Q&A box. Robert asks, I'd like to know if private colleges are ineligible for the SVOG if more than 10% of gross revenues come from financial aid, such as Pell Grants. Paige.
And that was yes. I'm trying to find the exact, I will type it to Robert.
Okay, thank you. John, go ahead. John, several venues in Charlotte received CARES Act money from the city to go towards rent. Are these funds to be included in earned income or gross revenue? And are we to include these funds in trying to qualify for the first group? That's a great question. If they received CARES Act money to go towards rent from the city, how does that affect their earned income, gross revenue? John, I think that's a very specific question that we may need to connect you to a business counselor to get a little bit more specifics on that.
It does actually speak to that in the gross earned revenue and the when it defines them. And I'm trying to remember, I believe it's on the March 22nd It was in the page 21 area, and started out like the first 5 questions. However, in the new frequently asked questions, I'm not sure where it lies there, because they did add 11 pages.
Yeah, unfortunately, we did just get a notification last night that there was a new FAQ, and there's 11 additional pages of things that we were unaware would be available today. So we are scrambling just a little bit to make sure that we're giving you all the right information. So again, which is really important for me to mention again, that the best approach for you would be, all of you, we recommend highly that you would connect with a business counselor through the SBTDC, as we are one of the partners designated by the SBA to help each entity and organization to answer these questions and to successfully apply if they qualify for the SVOG.
Hey, Cynthia, we do have just a few minutes left in our time. So maybe if we want to take maybe one more question and then just provide some reminders again and kind of wrap up, so that people, just a reminder of what people can expect next.
Great,
and
thank you,
our next webinar too.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley.
Sure.
Yeah, we've only got one more question, so we've done really well getting through 38 we had on our list. I think Paige is still furiously typing, so hopefully we'll get those wrapped up by the end of the hour. Charles just asked if we have not applied for the PPP2 yet. As yet, because of application issues, the box says you will not apply for an SVOG. So are you saying we have to wait until we get a loan amount on the PPP2 before we can submit our SVOG application? Unfortunately, this delays us from submitting the SVOG application. Anybody?
That is a decision that will have to be made as to whether or not you want to get your PPP application fully processed, because if you process the SVOG and you have not processed your PPP loan that you are trying to seek, if the SVOG is approved, you cannot accept the PPP loan. It doesn't work the other way around. You can have both. But then also remember that if you are waiting to hear on PPP, then you're going to deduct that amount from eligible award amount for your SVOG anyway. So it's just a decision in terms of sequencing what you want to do. So if you moved forward with the SVOG application before you know the status of your PPP loan, then you would be doing it with the risk that you may not be able to accept PPP.
That's great. Thank you, Ashley, for that answer. I think that really does perfectly position my comment, which is that the best advice we can give you really is to connect with a business counselor in your area with the SBTDC, because that person can help you to make those kinds of really important decisions by helping you to weigh those options, looking at your finances more closely, and helping you to evaluate and make the best decision for your company, your organization going forward. I did want to remind everyone that this webinar is recorded and will be available tomorrow. We're not sure exactly when, but give us about 24 hours to post it. And in the meantime, we really want to encourage you to, first of all, fill out the survey that will pop up when you close the webinar today. Your feedback really helps us to continue to improve our ability to bring you these webinars and keep you informed. And that we would love for you to go to sbtdc.org/ERFC to request a business counselor of your very own. And that is a counselor who will spend time with you one-on-one and review this whole process and walk you through it confidentially and specifically address your needs. I did want to just mention again a big thank you to everyone who's participated, particularly Paige, Joseph, and Ashley, who have brought their expertise to bear on this wonderful program provided by the SBA. And we thank the resource partners that the SBA has asked to join them, at which we are one. And we hope that you'll join us next week as we drill down on a little more specifically on the SVOG and the criteria for each individual area. And we are also going to ask to answer some of those more granular questions that we may not have been able to get to today. So Thank you for joining us. If anyone has any closing comments, I'm going to wrap us up.
We're good.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll hope to see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.